All right, we are standing in a little over a week, exactly a week before Yom Tov of Pesach, and we decided this year to give three classes focusing on the laws, the halachot, and also the spiritual meaning of those halachot as well. Today, we are going to focus in this three-part class. We're going to focus on the laws of chametz, cleaning of chametz, and we're going to lead into a short discussion about some teachings about the meanings of the different forms of cleaning and what does it mean to all of us. The rule is that on Pesach, any form of chametz, any amount of chametz is prohibited to be in the possession of a Jewish person. And therefore, before Pesach, we are focusing primarily on cleaning and making sure that all areas where usually we bring chametz in throughout the year, if it's in the dining rooms, in the kitchen, if you have an office area where you carry snacks, especially if you have children who take food to their rooms. So we are obligated to make sure that all those places are checked and to assure that there is no chametz. Now, it's not the mitzvah is not just to clean, the mitzvah is to check for chametz. So we obviously have the obligation the night before Pesach to do the checking of the chametz. But the mitzvah of checking the chametz begins way before the night before Pesach. And that's because our houses are quite large and there's lots of spaces that need to be examined and attended to, many shelves and surfaces and refrigerators and closets. So the cleaning for Pesach at an average Jewish house begins at least a week or more before Pesach to begin cleaning up the spaces to assure that our space is ready for Pesach. It's not only about the rooms and the areas where we eat, even books, all sorts of books that we use throughout the year within the chametz space, and all sorts of clothing that we use throughout the year with chametz. Everything needs to be checked for chametz. The mitzvah of bdikat chametz is to make sure that everything is being checked for chametz. And I want to emphasize this because some people have a false understanding that the mitzvah is to clean from chametz. Obviously, in order to check from chametz, you have to make sure the place is clean. But the mitzvah is bdikat chametz. It's not enough just to clean surfaces. The mitzvah is to check and make sure that those areas that you cleaned are actually examined from any leftovers of chametz. Now, obviously, you don't want to leave everything for the last minute. And this is why we have the time today to learn about it. And you have a week ahead of you to make it proper. The law of checking the chametz needs to be done in front of light. In other words, or you use a candle or a flashlight. And today everybody has a flashlight on their phone. So when you clean an area for Pesach, you take your flashlight and you look around to make sure that every corner was cleaned from chametz. And then you don't have to check that space anymore on the night before Pesach. Now, if you work in day hours, if you're in front of a window, enough for you to have daylight shining into that space where you just cleaned. If you have a clear window, not a window that is fogged or a window that has some tainting on it, if it's a clear window, you can use that as well to check the chametz. Now, if you can guard the place ever since you clean it, you can guard the place that chametz will not come in there, then the place is kosher for Pesach. You don't even have to go there with a candle on the night of before Pesach. A house with children, especially if there's little children, cleaning for Pesach is a lot more complex, a lot more difficult. Even last night, one of my children came downstairs with a bagel in their hands because this is how they used to. They make themselves food and they walk around the house. And therefore, checking for chametz is something that you have to really trust the environment around you that places that you cleaned and you checked already will not be re-chometzized. They will not, chometz will not arrive there. So, in order to make it really simple, I want to go over with you a little bit about different places and how this is being done. The floor of the house. And today we all have this smooth floors. We don't have any more like it used to be in the olden days, where the floor was made out of sand, or the floor was made out of different areas and cracks in between. Usually a floor is just one big smooth surface made out of hardwood, or made out of carpet, or made out of stone, tile. The way it works with the regular floor is, to clean it for Pesach, is just you have to give a good sweep. You sweep the floor really, really well from any crumbs that's there. And then if you really want to be extra special, you go over with water and chemicals, bleach or any form of chemical, and you really wash the floor really well. And that floor is kosher for Pesach. Now, even if there is chametz in the far edges, corners, maybe there's some crumbs left over from Shabbos, because you swept the floor really well, and because you used chemicals to wash the floor, comes an interesting phenomenon here, and that is that whatever is left as a residue of chametz becomes unedible, because you used bleach to wash the floor, because you used some form of a chemical to make the floors clean. So the way the Talmud says a dog cannot eat that residue anymore. In other words, usually dogs gravitate towards leftover food, but because it was already cleansed with bleach and with other stuff, a dog is not going to come and eat from that. So the language of the Talmud is, because it's pasul mi'achilat kelev, it's not anymore edible for a dog to eat, so you don't have to anymore worry about it at all. So therefore, when we talk about cleaning for Pesach, we don't have to, drive ourselves crazy. As it is, we're driving ourselves crazy. But the most important piece is, in the floor of the house, make a good sweep of the floor or a good vacuum, and then use, for a surface like a floor, use some basic bleach or chemicals to clean the floor, and everything that's there is automatically nullified, and you don't even have to go over with a candle that's already clean for Pesach. Okay? We have to just emphasize one point here. Anytime you clean a shelf or you clean a closet, when you clean your refrigerator, we'll go through some of that stuff. It's good to always use some form of a spray, like if you're using a Windex, or if you're using some form of a disinfectant. Those sprays, those disinfectants, make whatever chametz is left losing that ability to be edible, so you don't have to worry about it. Okay? Now, checking the areas that you cleaned, like I told you before in the beginning, you have to use a flashlight, you have to use something of a body of light, if it's an actual candle, to check those places that you cleaned. Using the window of the house, obviously it's only, we talk about a very clear window where the sun comes through very clearly. Then let's say if you clean the shelf, you take it to the window and you look through the corners to make sure no chametz is left. I want to go through with you particular spaces in the house that needs to be checked for chametz, and actually I will teach you today how you check them for chametz. I want to begin first of all with closets, clothing closets. The closets that you keep your clothing, usually people don't put chametz inside of them. And therefore, we don't have to worry about different cracks or crevices. Maybe a piece of bread was left there when you were, let's say, went to the closet to pick up something and you held a bagel in your hand and you forgot it there. And therefore, those closets where you keep clothing, it's enough just to clean up that area and take out whatever is there, look around, put it back. You don't have to do extra cleaning there. Obviously, when it comes to kitchen closets, that over there is flour that flies around. There is all sorts of stuff, breadcrumbs that goes into the crevices, into the cracks. Over there, you have to empty out those closets, make a thorough cleanup, spray disinfectant on the corners of the closet. And then when you're going to put in Pesach stuff, if you have Pesach food, Pesach condiments, stuff that you bought for Pesach, you make sure to put a piece of paper or a piece of plastic that divides between the space of the closet that was used the whole year for Pesach to the space where basically, as you see it in the supermarkets as well, they put some paper, and on top of the paper, you put that stuff. Obviously, before you line the cabinets, before you line the closet, you have to use a candle or a flashlight to check to make sure that that area is being examined from any residue of chametz. Same thing comes to drawers. You have kitchen drawers. You have to pull out the drawer. You have to clean up all the corners of that. And once you clean up all the corners of that, you take the drawer and you check the corners of the drawer with a candle, a flashlight, or you take it in front of the daylight outside to make sure there's no residue of chametz left there. Another important thing that many people don't realize is the pockets of their clothing. Now, someone who usually doesn't put anything in his pockets of his clothing, and there are people that their pants or their shirt or their jackets or their coats, they never put anything inside. Obviously, nothing that is chametz. A whole year they are aware of Pesach and they don't put anything inside. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to check it unless you want to be extra careful. But if maybe you have put in you had your hands dirty from dinner and you stuck your hands into your coat, or let's say Shabbos, you sit by the table with a jacket, and while you eat the challah, crumbs go into your pockets or into the sides of your jacket. Clothing have to be cleansed before Pesach. You take the clothing, and besides obviously washing them and so on and so forth, you have to empty out the pockets and stand in front of daylight. You go outside in front of the daylight and you check the pockets. That's called the mitzvah of b'dikat chametz, and you have to go through and do a checkup on that as well. We spoke about closets, we spoke about drawers, we spoke about clothing. Now let's talk about dishes. Now, dishes that you use throughout the year, you have to, and you want to use them for Pesach, those dishes have to be cleansed thoroughly. And we're going to see soon about certain dishes you have to go through what's called hagalat kelim, that is actually burning out any residue that's left in the dishes. But if you just have dishes from throughout the year that you're not going to use for Pesach, you still have to clean them before Pesach. You have to empty out any chametz that's in it. And to make a thorough cleaning, you don't have to drive yourself crazy to burn out every residue that's left on it. In the moment you wash the dishes with detergent and you use some form of a chemical to wash it, that dish already, the food, whatever residue of food is left in it, is not anymore edible for a dog to eat. And that's already not considered actual chametz. So you actually can skip it. Now, we'll talk in a moment about selling everything to a goy. This is the custom of mechirat chametz, of selling your chametz. If once you finish cleaning those dishes, and especially if you're selling it for a goy over Pesach, you put it together with the rest of the stuff that's sold to the goy, you really, really don't have to worry about cleaning them thoroughly. You do your best, but you just put it in those closets that we'll be talking in a minute, how to handle those dishes that will be sold for a goy. I want to talk about preparing your kitchen for Pesach. Very important. The center of the Jewish house on Pesach is the kitchen. The enormous amount of cooking. Pesach, we don't eat out. I mean, unless you're one of those people that have a tradition to go to a Pesach program. And most of us eat at home. We cook at home. And we don't have Pesach kitchens. I know in New York, I saw other places where people have a Pesach kitchen. They have a whole kitchen that is used just for Pesach. That's people who have the means to do that. They have a kitchen, especially for Pesach. Most of us take the same kitchen that we use throughout the year, and we transform the kitchen to start using it for Pesach. And here comes halachot that we have to pay a lot of attention to, and we have to be diligent to what we're doing. And I'm going to go through with you those laws. And some of you can later on listen to the recording if you didn't pick up some of the laws, or you can take notes while I'm speaking. I want to give a general rule, actually a couple general rules on the topic of koshering. Rule number one is, and I'll say it in Hebrew and then I'll translate. Keboiloi kach poltoi. Keboiloi kach poltoi means the same way a dish swallows something, the same way he spits it out. What do I mean by that? A dish that is being used for cooking, chametz, a counter that's being used for chametz throughout the year, the counter swallows chametz from stuff that spills on that. Hot, boiling hot soup, boiling hot pasta, stuff that are real chametz fall on our counters, fall on our stoves, fall on our ovens. And the same way it's being swallowed, chametz, that's how you have to spit it out. And therefore, if you want to kasher counters, we'll see in a minute each one of those things. The way to kasher the counters is to use boiling hot water. So whatever was swallowed while being boiled is now going to spit out while it's being boiled. Another rule number 2, and that is in order to kasher anything, counters, microwaves, surfaces, ovens, stovetops, to kasher anything, you have to wait 24 hours from the last time you used it. Big mistake, many forget. You need to wait 24 hours from the last time you used it. So basically, if you want to kasher your kitchen for Pesach, you have to clean the kitchen and then let the kitchen stay clean, untouched, for 24 hours. And then you can make the koshering part. Then you can do what we call the hagala. Same thing also with dishes. Any dish that you want to use, the oven, the grades, the stovetop, anything you want to use for Pesach, and you want to kasher it from chametz to be able to be used for Pesach, you have to wait 24 hours from the last time it was used. And the reason why we wait 24 hours is called pagum. Pagum means that any residue of food that was left on that surface becomes unedible anymore. So you wait 24 hours, and then you can do the process of kashering. Rule number 3. Rule number 3, when you kasher something, that surface or the dish have to be dry. Many times people make the mistake. They clean their counters, they wash their counters, and then they go and they pour the boiled water on that while the counters are still wet. You defeat the purpose. The counters have to be dry. The oven has to be dry. The dishes that you're going to do a hagala on them have to be dry. Okay? And the reason is if it's wet, then the hot that spills on it gets cooled off by the cold water that's on it. So you defeat the whole purpose. Another rule, anything that we will talk about that you can use boiling hot water to kasher, you can actually use a light blowtorch. That's called libun kal. Libun kal means you take a blowtorch and you put it against that surface, in the moment that surface becomes so hot that if you touch it, you have to jump with your finger back. It's called yatsi lettuce boy. Then that surface becomes kosher. And I'm going to go through with you based on these rules that you just heard. I'm going to go with you now, step by step. We're going to start from the stovetop. We're going to move to the counters. We're going to talk about covering the counters. We're going to talk about the sink that you use for cooking. We're going to talk about the faucets, jewelry. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff that has particular rules. And I want you to follow along because this is all biblical commandment. This is not wishy-washy stuff. This is important to listen, to follow, to take note, and spend the next week, especially this big weekend coming ahead of us, spending time to kasher our house and getting it ready for Pessach. Let's start, first of all, with the stovetop. All the action happens in the stovetop. You have the burners, you have the grates, you have those areas where the residue of food or when the soup spills over, it falls inside. You have the entire surface of the counter. First thing you have to do is you have to take apart the entire counter. Make sure you take apart everything that you can take apart, you take apart. Because between every crack in that counter, in that stovetop, there is food. And I spend many hours just on the stovetop. My parents in their house have a stovetop that they use only for Pesach because it's so difficult to clean a stovetop. They rather have a new stovetop that is covered all year, and they change the stovetop. They put away the chametz stovetop and they have a special stovetop for Pesach. But if you want to kasher the stovetop, first thing is you got to take it apart, clean it really well, and go through the process of agala, pouring boiling hot water in it or dipping it into a pot with bubbling hot water. All the burners, you have to boil it in water, use strong chemicals, whatever chemicals you have that really burns any leftover residue in it, and then go through the agala, if it means putting it in a pot of boiling water and putting it in a pot of cold water, doing agala, or even better, because there is actual fire coming out by the burners, is to actually blowtorch those burners. Okay? Now, those areas with the pots sit on it, you all buy new ones for the holiday, or you would use a blowtorch to burn it. And then besides using a blowtorch to burn it, you have to put silver foil, thick silver foil, that the Pesach pots will not sit on the same surface of the same place where the pots are sitting throughout the year. Same thing also, that area where all the leftover food falls into, you have to go through the process of hagala, or dipping it in boiling hot water while it bubbles, or pouring on it boiling hot water, or blowtorching it, covering it with thick silver foil, and that's the only way you can use it. So this is basically stovetop. Now, there's different stovetops. There's electric stovetop, there is gas. I was giving you the extreme example, that's a gas stovetop. But if you have an electric stovetop, same thing. You clean it as strong as you can and you put in silver foil in every surface. Make sure it's a thick silver foil. You can't use that thin silver foil. If you're using thin ones, you have to use at least 4 layers of it. 4 layers of thin silver foil, or you buy the really thick silver foil that you can buy in Costco and other places that sell extra thick silver foil, and you use that. There is a stovetop that looks like a glass. Yeah, the modern stovetops, that's like a glass that when you turn on, like it turns red. It's literally impossible to make it kosher for Pesach. And many of the halachic commentaries are trying to figure out ways how to use it for Pesach, because it's impossible to cover it. It's impossible to make agala on it. So if you can refrain and buy yourself electric stovetop just for Pesach to cook, that will be probably the preferred way of going about it, because those glass stovetops are just impossible to kasher. If you have any questions while I'm speaking, you can use the chat to ask your questions, and we'll address them when we finish the subject. Let's talk a moment about the counters. So there's different types of counters. There's wooden counters from mica. There's counters made out of stone, counters made out of marble. Counters, the way to kasher them is like I told you before, you clean them really well. You don't use them for 24 hours. And then you pour boiling water from a kettle. And it's better to use an electric kettle because the water, the heating element sits inside a kettle. So the water is really, really boiling while you pour it. And after 24 hours and the counters are dry, you just pour boiling hot water on every side of that counter. And something that's important to remember, the wall, the side of the counter that sits against the wall, that too, you have to pour boiling hot water on that. After you're done, then you have to cover the counters. It's not enough to kasher them from chametz. You have to cover the counters. You can use several forms of covering. The best thing is if you have wood planks, or if you can go and get some plastic, plexiglass, or you can get some form of a wallpaper, or you can get thick silver foil. You have to cover the counters because whatever food you use on Pesach cannot come in touch with the actual counter that you use throughout the year. Okay? So this is something that is important, that after you do the agala, after you do the kashering of the counters need to be covered as well. It's not enough just to kasher them. You have to actually cover the counters, and after Pesach, you remove the covering and you go back to use the original counters. One of the hard things to kasher is the kitchen sink. Kitchen sink itself, you can kasher, you can clean it really, really well, and you make sure not to use the kitchen sink with something hot for 24 hours. And then what you do is, you do with the same thing you do with your counter, you pour boiling water straight out of a kettle to every corner of that sink. Now, in the sink, in the hole of the sink, where the drainage is, you pour some form of an acid. Best thing is to use Drano. You pour Drano or something similar to Drano down that drain. And what that does is it causes any chametz that's left on the surface of the drain in the pipes of the upper part of the pipes, everything gets burnt out, all the fats, all the schmutz. And if there is any chametz, it becomes unedible for a dog to consume. And that's how you kasher the drain as well. Obviously, after you do all of this and the water is boiling hot, the best thing is to put an insert in the sink. To use a insert. You could go to Home Depot, you buy a sink insert and you use an insert, or you can line the inside of the sink with some silver foil or with some plastic to use it. So whatever food you manage in that sink over Pesach doesn't get in touch with the actual walls of the sink. And that's one of the ways. Now the faucet, where you take the water out of the sink, also is being used throughout the year with chametz hands. While you work in the kitchen, your hands are filled with pasta, or you mix the dough and you have chametz hands. When you pour the boiling hot water, you have to pour it also on the faucet, and you make sure to turn on the faucet on boiling hot while you do that, So when you pour the boiling hot water, there is hot water coming from inside of the sink, and there is hot water poured on top of the sink. Any questions about what we said till now? You turn on your microphone and ask. If not, we're going to move forward to discuss a couple more things that needs to be cleaned for Pesach. We're still going to talk about jewelry. We're going to talk about taking care on teeth, that especially if you have retainers. We talk about the garbage cans. We're going to talk about flowers, tables, refrigerator, freezer, and we're going to conclude with some words of inspiration about the selling of the chametz. Any questions?
So for this, hi Rabbi, for this kind
Yeah.
of counters that they're not wood, but it's like a compression wood, we do this the same thing, like just water, hot water.
Just boiling hot water straight out of a boiling kettle. After you clean the counters and you wait 24 hours. And then once you finish pouring boiling hot water, you cover the counter with something like a silver foil or with a thick paper or some form of plastic.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay. Now, Kiddush cups that you use throughout the year that you want to use on Pesach. Same thing also, all sorts of cutlery that you use throughout the year that you want to use on Pesach. There is something that you do, you get a pot, not a pot that you cook in. It's a special pot. Every Jewish house has a pot like this. It's called a pot of kashering. Go down to Ross or one of those stores and you buy a cheap pot. Make sure it's a large pot. That pot is used only for kashering dishes. And that pot you fill up with water and you let it boil till the water becomes really bubbly. And while the water is bubbly, prepare right next to that, prepare a bucket with cold water. And you're going to do agalat kelim. Agalat kelim means you take some form of a net, or you can use a tweezer, and you take the Kiddush cup and you dip it, or the cutlery, you dip it inside the bubbling water. While it's bubbling, you put it inside, you wait 3 or 4 seconds, you take it out, and you put it into the cold water. Same thing also with cutlery. You can only do it with metal objects. Kashering can only be done with metal. So let's say rings. A woman wears her rings on her hands, or a man wears rings on his hands. And those rings you eat everyday food with. Those rings are always around chametz throughout the time. One of the things that have to go through a kashering is also rings. You eat kugel on Shabbos with your hands on it. Those rings have chametz in them. And therefore, you have to do hagala on those rings. So while you do your cups, your Kiddush cups, you take your rings and you make sure to gently immerse them into the hot water. Don't let it sit for too long. And then you put cold water on it. If you don't want to do a whole pot, what you can do is you can put the rings, let's say, inside the sink once it's kashered. Then you heat up a boiling kettle with hot water. And while the water is bubbling, you pour the boiling hot water onto the ring, and the ring becomes kasher. Regarding retainers, people who have retainers stop eating hot chametz for 24 hours before Pesach. So they can eat food, but they don't eat anything that is hot chametz 24 hours before. You clean the retainers really, really well. And once you finish cleaning the retainers really well, you scrub it really well. Then you take boiling water and you sink those retainers inside the boiling water. Now, if those retainers are attached to your mouth, then you mix boiling water with something like a strong toothpaste, or you mix it with some form of a chemical, if it's what is it called, baking soda, and you just, as hot as you can, just swish it around your mouth and you spit. Garbage cans. So in Issaquah, by us, they collect the garbage on Thursday night. This year Pesach is Wednesday night. There's a lot of garbage that accumulates in a Jewish house the week before Pesach, a lot of chametz. So what do we do with the chametz in the garbage can? Now, the garbage cans belong to the garbage company. Okay? So, as you know, I don't know if you work with Republic or you work with one of the other garbage companies. They own the garbage cans and they let you have it for the time that you are paying them for their service. Once the service is done, they collect back the cans. So that's a nice thing, is that you know that the garbage cans really don't belong to you. If it belongs to you, then it's a little bit more problematic. So the garbage cans don't belong to you. So what you do is, before Pesach, let's say late morning before the actual holiday, before the actual holiday comes in, you take the garbage can and you take it down to the street, to the curb. Even though it's still Wednesday and the garbage can will only be collected on Thursday, you keep the garbage cans in the curb, and then the company will collect it, whatever they collected it. Better to keep the cans in the curb throughout the holiday of Pesach, or keep it outside of your house. I mean, if it disturbs the neighbors, or you're going to have problem with HOA, you can keep it in the garage. If you sold the garage and all its content for Pesach, you could keep it in your garage as well. But you don't have to actually wash and clean your garbage cans to make them kosher Pesach. One of the things that people are not aware of is flowers. We have flowers laying around our house. Some flowers come with stalks of barley or wheat for beauty. Those stalks are chametz, complete chametz. And personally, in my own life, was one year Pesach, I was sitting downstairs in the basement and I look at the bouquet of flowers sitting by the windowsill, and I see that in this bouquet, it's a plastic bouquet, in the bouquet was sitting stalks of barley, real chametz. So we have to make sure to check before Pesach to make sure that we don't have any of that stuff laying around our house. Tables, walls, all other stuff that not necessarily are coming in touch with Pesach food. Really, you don't have to clean it before Pesach. Traditionally, Jews washed everything for Pesach, scrub everything. And there's a beautiful letter where one of the great sages, the Noda B'Yehuda, writes that they're doing this, the days of Nisan is so not settled, because it's the days of the month of Nisan. He can't really study, he can't really write. He says, I don't really have space in my house. Every moment they push me from one room to another because they are scrubbing the walls in honor of the holiday. But that's a Jewish tradition, to scrub the house, regardless if those areas are used for chametz or not. And now I come to the most heavy part of cleaning. If you thought the stove is difficult, one of the most difficult areas to clean for Pesach in a Jewish house is the refrigerator and the freezer. Okay? The refrigerator and the freezer is the place where stuff marinates, literally, throughout the year. Challah, leftover food. So cleaning the refrigerator and the freezer for Pesach takes a lot of attention to detail. So first of all, you empty out everything that's in the refrigerator or the freezer. And what you do is you let the freezer defrost completely. You have to let the freezer defrost. Once the refrigerator and the freezer are defrosted, you begin a thorough cleanup. And the refrigerator, you don't only clean the shelves or the walls or the corners. You have to clean the doors of the refrigerator, the rubber that's around the refrigerator, the handles of the refrigerator. There is an enormous amount of stuff that has to be cleaned in that refrigerator. Once you finish the whole cleaning, you take a candle and you do bedikat chametz. You have to go over with a candle, if not a candle, a flashlight, and you have to look to make sure there is no chametz left anywhere on the inside or on the outside of the refrigerator. Only then, you line the shelves. You put paper, silver foil, plastic, you line the shelves, and then you can put inside back Pesach stuff. You cannot have Pesach stuff be in touch with the shelves that was used throughout the year for chametz, and that is because stuff in the refrigerator marinates, and there's a special halacha of kavush. It sits there for a long time. Same thing also with the freezer. When you put stuff in the freezer for Pesach, you double wrap it. You make sure stuff is in the bag, in a case. Sometimes you double bag things, because as much as you clean the freezer, there's always in the walls of the freezer, pouring hot boiling water doesn't work because you don't want to destroy your freezer. So you don't pour boil. It's not a counter that you can pour boiling hot water. So you have to put things in the freezer after you clean it and you check the chametz and you line it. You make sure to put things in the freezer double bagged, double wrapped, or have containers that are specially for Pesach to make sure that it's contained. Now, I want to remind you again, after everything we said in these laws, that all the areas that are being cleaned through sweeping and cleaning, especially after you're making some thorough cleanup of the house and you used all sorts of chemicals, you still have an obligation to do the mitzvah on the night before Pesach of putting 10 pieces of chametz and checking for every corner to find if there's anything left and making sure that everything was cleansed. Before we entering the subject of selling your chametz, is there any questions that you have in your mind while I was talking, something that you feel that you want to ask, so I can cover that as well? Okay, so let's talk about selling the chametz. The idea of selling the chametz is not some form of a loophole. Those of you who are familiar with the laws of selling the chametz, it's a real sale. There's a guy who is invited by the rabbi, and the rabbi sits with the guy and he hands him over hundreds, or some of them even thousands, of properties that belongs to Jewish people. And in those properties, people write the address, the sign, and they give over their ownership that's in it. They give the rabbi permission to do with that whatever he sees right and to make a proper sale. The guy is invited usually the night before Pesach or the morning of Pesach before midday, and the guy puts down a down payment. He is buying from the moment of the down payment, is purchasing all the chametz that was sold to him, all those documents, all those signed documents. Now, the guy is being given 7 days to make a decision if he wants to finish the purchase. And if he doesn't answer in the end of the 7 days, we buy it back from him. But in these 7 days, he has permission to hold on to any of this chametz and do with it as he wishes. And whatever he touches during those 7 days, we're going to charge him at the end of Pesach for whatever he took. So if a guy comes to your house and he starts looking for chametz, showing you that the document is his, don't worry about it. At the end of Pesach, when the rabbi sits with him, you will go through with him those documents and see if he touched anything. And if he did, he's going to have to pay you back top dollar for what he took. So obviously the goy is not going to come to your house because most goyim, especially the goy that we sell the chametz to, is not interested in your dirty dishes that you left from before Pesach, or the challah that you left in the freezer, or whatever chametz you left, some old pasta. So don't worry about it. But I just want to say that to you is that the sale is a real sale. There's witnesses, there's guarantors. This is a real sale. This is not a play of words or play of games or a loophole or a pretend. It's not a pretend. I have participated many, many years watching how the sale is done. The documents are drafted. The guy learns the documents. He understands his obligation. And he actually gives money as a down payment. The rabbi holds the money. And that's how the sale is done correctly. Now, I want to talk about the stuff that you sell for chametz. Anything you sell for chametz, you have to make sure to store it in a place where you don't have direct contact with. Putting it in your crawl space, putting it in a room that you're not going to go to naturally on Pesach. Now, if you keep it in the kitchen in certain closets, you have to put a sticker or a piece of duct tape or a piece of masking tape, some form of tape that says clearly chametz on it. So you have a reminder not to go over to those shelves and open it and take from it chametz on Pesach. Now, if you are far away and you can't actually do the actual sale, you could do it through email today. You could do it on the website. You could do it over the phone even. You must sign some form of a document. And this is why going online and doing it is some form of communicating your name, your address, where the chametz is, and sending it over, not waiting for last minute. Every year, people call. They say, I forgot to sell my chametz. What do? It's already in the afternoon before Pesach. Big problem. If you didn't sell your chametz before the time that you have to sell it, you literally have to go and start burning anything that has chametz in it. It's a huge problem. So I keep on sending out the email about it. It's on the website. Go in, do it today, not tomorrow. Sell your chametz, and that's the way you get rid of your chametz for Pesach. With this, I'm concluding the legalities, the laws of selling chametz, getting rid of chametz. And now just a word of inspiration. The word chametz and the word matzah have the same three letters. The difference is chametz is written with a chet and matzah is written with a hey. And the chet and the hey, those of you who know Hebrew know that the chet and the hey look the same. They look like they have a right leg, a left leg, and a roof. The difference is that the hay has a little space between the left leg and the roof. The chet, on the other end, is completely sealed. The entrance to the chet is from below. But the hay has a little window on top that you can escape. The difference between chametz and matzah is chametz and matzah, both of them are almost the same. Both of them are made out of flour and water. Chametz is flour and water, and it had a chance to rise. We spoke many times, and you know that symbolizes the ego. It symbolizes the yetzer, the inclination of a person. Matzah, on the other end, symbolizes the same thing, but egoless. There is a window on top. It looks the same. It maybe even tastes the same. But there is an opening above that allows a connection with Hashem that makes sure that the ego remains in check. The slavery of Egypt and the slavery of our own life, being enslaved to our inclination, being enslaved to our instincts, being enslaved to our cravings and to our desires and to our addictions, all of those come as a result of being stuck in an ego state. Sometimes it's even a spiritual ego. We become stubborn in certain ways. We're not willing to learn new ways of being. We only want to accept my way or the highway. We become militant about certain spiritual ideas that we have, and we forget that there is other things around us who need attention as well. Matzah opens up the window that reminds you to be flexible, to make sure that your ego, whatever level of ego it is, if it's a gross ego, an ego that is in the lowest place, always as an opening and a connection to Hashem, so that you constantly can be in a state of self-nullification to God. Jews occupy themselves weeks before Pesach to clean the chametz, to burn the chametz, to check the chametz in front of the light, making sure that there's not a residue, there's not a leftover, there's not a remnant of chametz in our life. The way we usher in redemption, real redemption, true redemption, the way we experience ultimate redemption is by being in a state of matzah, to be in a place of total self-nullification, total burn of any ego that's in the space, letting God himself shine in us, through us, being a channel who is ready to be the one that the Shekhinah can shine through you. So, friends, all those laws we learned today, let's take today's Tuesday night. Tomorrow is Wednesday. Begin the cleaning. And while you clean, do the cleaning with yourself as well. And God willing, when Wednesday morning next week comes and you're ready to finish the last few remnants of the chametz, you'll be ready by Wednesday evening to usher in the holiday of Pesach and be ready for not just the redemption of Egypt, but the redemption of all redemptions, the redemption of the coming of Mashiach speedily in our days. Amen.